Being a dad doesn't mean you have to have a dad bod. In fact, the best dads I know are fit, healthy, and actively involved in their kids' lives. Today's guest is going to give you some keys to living a healthy life as a parent, and you're going to hear us talk a lot about what that means as your kids continue to get older. Welcome to the Evolve Podcast. Evolve your body, evolve your mind, evolve your soul, and evolve your tribe. And now it's time to disrupt. And with that, folks, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Evolve Podcast. My co-host is taking the day off. He had hip surgery, so we want to wish him well. And guys, I'm really fortunate today to be joined by a very special guest. You know, there are a few people when I get into the health and fitness business that I can look back on and say that person was a mentor. That person taught me something that no one else did. And today's guest is one of those few people that taught me quite a bit about the business of health and fitness. And I think one of the things that I learned early on from today's guest was it's not just about understanding the business of health and fitness, but it's living it. What does it mean to actually be in health and fitness and to live a healthy lifestyle? Jeff Stokes, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, Steve, I appreciate it. Look, I've had this circled on my calendar for a while and really excited. You know, you and I have a long history of working together, and it'll just be a natural conversation, but just really excited to join your show today.
Yeah, so great to have you. So for our listeners, tell them a little bit about you and what are you doing right now?
Yeah, look, it's been quite the journey, but I'm one of those individuals that found something that I'm very passionate about right out of college. And it probably started even, in high school and in my youth, and have never looked back. And so it's hard to even say this number, 30 years. I always say 25 to kind of trick people that I'm not that old, but it's been perfect. 30 years I've been in this fitness space and have just been very blessed with working with some incredible brands. Right out of college, I fell into a company that at that time was really the company to work for in the fitness space in the late 80s and early 90s. And we both know this individual, Don Wildman. So I worked with US Health and Tennis, right, which was Bally's and Holiday Spas and Jack LaLanne. But I actually worked for Holiday Spas back in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area that eventually became Bally's. And so just a great experience, coming out of college, knowing nothing about the industry. They had great training programs. Look, we both worked for Lifetime Fitness, another just blue blood in this industry. I got a chance to work really side by side with Bahram at the early stages when he was building this vision of healthy destinations across the globe. I've also worked with Chuck and Dave, the founders of Anytime Fitness. Another brilliant couple founders. And then now with Anthony Geisler here at Exponential Fitness, arguably the largest boutique fitness franchisor in the world with 2,600 locations. And so I look back at that history, Steve, and just truly blessed to work with mentors myself, like folks that have really helped me guide and learn and evolve into the leader I am today. As all those different entities were growing at different stages, right? And so I'm the president of Stride Fitness, which is one of the 10 brands at Expo. We're publicly traded. I got to ring the bell last summer, New York Stock Exchange, which was a bucket list. And now I am the president of the emerging brand, one of the smaller brands in the portfolio, which we feel has got some really big expectations over the next few years now that kind of the global pandemic is in our past. So I'm out in Southern California and can't argue about that.
It's amazing that, before we jumped on the air, you were talking about how you fell into this business. And I think many people do. We find something about the business that attracts us and then we fall into it. And then we look back and say, wow, it's been a really long time. Cool people that we meet along the way, really interesting mentors. You mentioned Don Wildman. I had an opportunity to meet Don in the later stages of life. And, God rest his soul, he passed away a few years ago from cancer. But probably 6 to 9 months before he passed away, we were sitting on a bike next to each other in the gym. He was rehabbing something to do with his knee, and I had a hip issue or whatever it was, right? And Don taught me something that I will stick with me for the rest of my life. Here's a guy who had competed in so many different triathlons and was fit throughout his entire life. I mean, he was so proud that in his 70s and 80s, he would tear his shirt off and he was one of the most ripped guys in the room. And I said, Don, how do you do it? What is it? What's your secret? And he said, Steve, it really boils down to, I will work as hard as I can today, but not so hard to where it makes me so sore that I can't do it the next day. And that changed my life. I don't have rest days now. I don't take a day off from being active because of what he told me. And that has completely changed my mindset. What's something, Jeff, as you've been through this career and you've met a lot of these really fascinating people, what are some of the keys that you've learned over the years?
Yeah, look, before I want to do a quick Don story because he made an impact on me early as well.
There's no shortage of Don stories for anybody that knows.
Yeah, look, I've actually got back then you actually had help wanted ads in the newspaper, right? And so I have the help wanted ad that I
look at that
responded to that caught my attention for U.S. Health and Tennis back then. And it said, if you are a motivated sales pro or have a background in sports and fitness and are looking to move into management, we need each other. With our rapid advancement, we offer you the ability to control your own destiny based on your own talent and ability. And so that caught my attention because I'm like, I'm kind of like a sales marketing guy. I'm a sports and fitness guy. Had no idea that would lead me down the path of a 30-year career in the health and fitness industry. And Don wasn't the person I interviewed with. I was fortunate enough to meet him in person later on in my career. And the one claim to fame is he dressed up as the Energizer Bunny for our company Halloween party in Vegas one year. All the top performers, he flew out to Vegas. And that was probably the perfect costume for him, the Energizer Bunny. Yeah. Here's a guy that did Ironmans in his 70s. And to your point, could take off his shirt and had ripped abs and a bicep that you die for. Yeah. And just an incredible mentor, and probably made the same impression on me as well, that look, if you're in this business, you really need to be a role model that walks the walk. And so I had to share that with you because I pulled this up today. I still have the help wanted ad that got me started in this industry.
That's so cool.
So long ago. And, it started really with my parents, to be honest. I mean, I grew up in a very small town back in the East Coast. And I look back like, why have I created these habits over the years? And some, yes, it's you personally, but I really thank my parents for getting me involved. And not only sport, because that was really my DNA in my youth. I really enjoyed them. I see now the value of sports for kids. But it's also lifelong sports, like things like snow skiing. Snowboarding wasn't around at that point. Yeah. Water skiing and wakeboarding and things that you can do with your buddies or your friends when you're in your 50s and 60s and 70s, which I still do. And so I look back and I say, man, they probably didn't know it, but they were creating some DNA that has just guided me through my entire life as a dad, as a husband, as a president of a brand. And it really is centered around just make healthy living an important part of your day, right? And never go a day without doing something that's part of that. And so I'll share with you, some 5 tips I think that'll help people that maybe are struggling to create those healthy habits. But at the end of the day, it's just really been a core of who I am that started back in my youth. And now being a dad, I see how that influences my kids. I've got 2 younger kids, a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I've got an older son. And I talk to him quite often about, what are some of the things that have helped you through your career? And he'll mention, sports. He played hockey and how disciplined that made him be. he talks about how it's important to stay healthy like my dad, because we would do things
That's
like go
cool.
on hikes and bike rides. And so I think there's a really important role that we play as parents that start early on in life that help our kids develop into, just really good, healthy adults.
Yeah, I want to tap into the parent-child relationship, but while we're on the subject of Don, I have to tell this story. So that same day, while we're sitting there on the bike, and we just had some time to kill, I said, "Hey, I watched you when you were on Shark Tank," and Don had an opportunity to get a kid, the local Utah kid, on Shark Tank to help push his product. Don said, "Look, let's go on there. I'll help you push your product." At a certain point, when the sharks figured out who Don was, they're like, "Well, you're a shark. Like, you have the same type of money we have. What are you doing here?" It's a hilarious episode, but what the episode doesn't say is that when Don finished up, I mean, Barbara Cochran fell in love with this guy because here he is flexing. You talked about the bicep. He said, "Well, I didn't tell Barbara at the time that I was married because I was trying to
Yeah.
close the deal." And so she came up and grabbed my ass afterwards. and then I pulled out the picture and showed her what my wife looked like. And he goes, "We had already done the deal, so it was good."
Yeah. I saw that episode too, and it was fantastic. It is we don't even do it justice. You have to watch that episode live, and he is quite the character. When they find
Yeah.
out his background and his his wealth, it turned the conversation a little bit, but it was really more to help this younger fellow to sell his brand. So,
but he became a shark.
Great story.
Yeah, he became a shark in that show because he said, "I'll put money in if you guys do." So the way they did the deal, if you guys have not seen the episode, I believe it was called Hand Out Gloves. And look up the episode where it talks about a triathlete, comes on Shark Tank or something like that. I can't remember exactly how they did it, but it's a hilarious episode. You mentioned growing up, Jeff, that your parents had gotten you involved in sports, and that really set things for your life. I can resonate with that because my parents did the same thing. But also growing up where I did, I had an opportunity to be so close to outdoor activities, water skiing, hiking, climbing. All of these things were literally in my backyard. And so it became this hand in glove fit that I think set me up for life. You're talking about your oldest son who's 30 years old now. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And when he takes his shirt off, it's not just somebody in the bathroom that sees him. There's millions of people that see him now, right? So he's got to look a certain way. So when he says, "Hey, I want to be fit like my dad," that's a great compliment. But talk a little bit about how what you learned from your parents translated into what you taught your kids.
Yeah, and look, back then, I talk like I'm like my 80s or something, but there really wasn't
Right.
the structured travel, teams. There really wasn't the sports specific the things that my kids now have available to them versus, when I was coming up, night and day difference. But with that being said, and my parents weren't members of health clubs, right? So health club, being a regular user and going to the gym wasn't in my DNA. I didn't see my parents doing that, but I always saw my parents being active, right? I always saw them. My dad was a coach. My dad was also went skiing with us. He went water skiing with us, and he went for bike rides with me. And so all those little things, whether he knew it or not, he was really creating those healthy habits for me early on. And so I just duplicated what I saw. So I am now a coach for my kids. I now take them skiing. I now take them, surfing or mountain biking or whatever it might be. And I don't let age become a factor. I just do what my body allows me to do. And I'm active as much as I am active. That's a great point. I also know my limits now. So as I've gotten older, I make sure that it's more about the longevity and doing activities that keep me in shape, but not necessarily I'm going to be the fittest in the room. Right. And so I think those are the little things as parents, and, kind of a good transition into these 5 things that I've kind of taken with me over the years. And the first one really, Steve, has nothing to do with fitness. It's about creating a good habit and creating good daily habits. And you'll hear this in a lot of leadership training. A lot of military folks talk about this all the time. But I had to make my bed every day from as long as I know, maybe second, third grade. And so I start with that. Like the first tip is it's the first win of the day. And I talk about as a business coach about winning the day, right? To win the week, to win the month, win the year, you got to break it down into simple, small victories. And so making the bed, which I make my kids do every day, is a checklist, right? I got it done. I feel accomplished. And look, let's face it, it's nothing better than to get in a bed at night that has been made, and sleeping and quality sleep is part of healthy living as well. So there's probably some common denominators there, but number one is just a simple task that you can do in the morning that will lead to other simple tasks and other victories. And I see that becoming habit forming. The second is movement in the morning, right?
Yeah,
so making your bed is not going to get you in shape, right? But it is going to get you in the mindset of, all right, I'm gonna win this day. And so I've always been a person that needs to work out in the morning, right? I need the blood flow. I need something that gets my day going. And if you can't get to the gym, your schedule doesn't allow you, look, that might just be doing some jumping jacks. That might be doing some sit-ups and push-ups. That might be going for a walk. Doing something that gets your body and your brain functioning and your blood flow going in the morning after you make your bed. Guess what? Now you feel like I can conquer this day. I can take on any obstacle or any challenge I get because you're feeling better about yourself, right? So those two, and you might want to comment here, Steve, and maybe things that you do as well. But I feel like that morning
go there.
routine is critical.
It really is. And I want to talk about the first one. I mean, winning the day, creating that momentum is critical, right? Making the bed, I know, is a really common one. For me, I found that because I get up so early, I don't make my bed because my wife is still in it. I think she'd be upset if I did. But I have to win the day in the same way, where I'll get up, and the first thing I do is my hand goes directly to my book that I read every single day. And it's a new book, depending on, where I'm at or what I'm focused on.
Yeah.
But, right now I'm reading James P. Carson's book on finite and infinite games. That's the philosophy book that I want to read. I want to learn more about game theory. It's fascinating to me, right? But I win the day by doing that before I do anything else. And what happened at the beginning of this particular routine that I'm doing. So my alarm goes off at 4:00. I'm up. I get out of bed. I walk out of the room. I go to the chair where I read. My hand goes on the book. And for the longest time, there was that little liar in the back of my head that would say, well, it's probably a rest day. It's probably a day where you could sleep in. You could spend 5 more minutes in the bed. And about 2 to 3 months into this process, that voice completely died. I never hear it anymore. There's nothing fighting against me. And that feeling is part of this ongoing evolution that happens on a day-to-day basis. Now I've won the day, and it just gets me going. I'm also a big fan of what you were talking about. I want to talk more about the movement in the morning. Some people say, well, I work out better in the evening, and that's fine. That might be true. But there is a significant amount of science that shows that even if it's just doing a few things, doing a few stretches, doing some push-ups, doing something, going for a walk, it's going to prime your body to prep you for whatever it is that you're doing. Let's talk for just a second, though, because, Jeff, these two things, they're critical, but I also know over the years you've traveled. You lived a lot of different places, but you've traveled a lot with your roles and responsibilities. So how do you get your movement in if you're on the road?
Yeah, no, that's great. And look, I'd be lying if I said that I've made every single bed that I've slept in, because there's also a fun part about a hotel.
Yes.
I tend to be a little bit messier when I travel because I don't have to clean it up. But I still do. Like, I still believe in that philosophy where I will clean up the room, clean up the bed space, and I will exercise, right? I will try to find, whether it's in the hotel, fitness center, whether it's a local gym. I like to shop and go around and visit other brands. I might go out for a walk or a run. I'm going to do something. I'm going to build it into my day. So whether I am in Europe or I am in Brazil or I am in Miami or Salt Lake City, I am in that same habit. And I also try to get on that time zone as quick as possible so that you can play tricks
Yeah.
with your mind,
Yeah.
which is one of the other things I want to talk about. Train your brain to remember how you feel when you're done, so that you can trick your brain into, those rainy days or those cold days, still get it done. And we'll come back to that one. But yeah, Steve, great question. Like I think it's consistency, and it's after you've created that habit. I feel a little cloudy, and there's days where if I don't get some type of movement, and it's not 100%, I feel cloudy. Like, so I know that I'm not going to be as productive and I'm not going to be as dynamic if I don't get that morning routine accomplished. I do not win the morning.
Yeah. And I love what you're talking about. It's not necessarily an all or nothing mentality, because you're not saying, hey, I've got to get up. And if I'm, in Florida, or if I'm in Europe, I've got to get my 10 sets of 10 in. I have to get my, whatever it is, but it's just movement. If you're moving every single day, you're priming your body, you're priming your brain for that overall success. So I love it. Have that habit of winning the day and then go towards movement. What's the third tip, Jeff?
So the other one for me might be a little old school. There's technology now that, you don't have to write it down. But for me, it's write it down, put it in your schedule. So my staff right now could go on my Google Calendar and they know when Jeff is planning to work out for the entire week, right? And I mentally and visually see it every day as well. And so I like to do it, again, as I shared, in the morning. But if I got an early morning or something's going on with my family, I'll look to do an afternoon class, or I'll look to do an afternoon walk run. And so I put it in the schedule, because what we see, what we visualize, we do. And so I'm a big fan of to-do lists, almost too bad where I've got to-do lists for to-do lists. But I like visualization. Yep. And I like to know how my day is going to be set up. And exercise is part of that. So if I've got an executive meeting with the executive team of Expo, that's in my calendar, and it's just as important as my 45-minute class at Stride in that day, right? And so it's the priority in how you schedule your time. We're all given the same 24 hours. That's what always kind of scratches my head is, everybody gets the same 24 hours, but how do some get so much more out of that 24-hour window, where others are complaining about, I don't have enough time? And I hate that analogy. You just got to find how to make time. And so that's number 3 for me.
The most successful people really do write it all down, right? The most successful people I've ever seen, and those that stay fit while they're doing the rest of life, business, work, business, family, they do write it down and they schedule it in, and it becomes a priority. This is something I remember back when you and I were working together, and you were my boss and my mentor. You were at the gym every morning, and it was in your calendar. Even you would travel to Salt Lake City. It was in the calendar. Sometimes we're working out together. And sometimes we're doing a better workout together where we're actually out on the mountain and skiing, right?
Yeah.
But it was always in the calendar. And it's something that if you put it in the calendar, you're going to accomplish it. And so I love that. So number 3, make sure it's written down, make sure it's in the calendar. All right. So we're talking the 5 keys to living a healthy life as a parent. What's number 4?
Number 4, train your brain to remember how you feel when you finish your workout. Right. And so
I like that.
They always say that the biggest wins are the days when you don't want to do something, and you're able to overcome that internal conversation that you're having with yourself. Look, we talk to ourselves a lot more than we talk to anybody else. Right. Yeah. So if you can control that internal dialogue, and look, it's still to this day, I've created the habits, and I appreciate you bringing it up, Steve, because we worked together, 15 years ago?
Yeah,
right. And I still
15,
today, my staff can go in my calendar. Yeah, 15, 20. My staff can go in my calendar, and they know that Jeff is going to be at Stride, or Jeff's going to be doing yoga, or Jeff's going to be running. Right. And so I've created that habit that has lasted for a long time now. And so not every day do I want to get up. Not
Yeah.
every day do I want to get out of bed. Not every day do I want to go work out. What I have trained my brain to say is, man, you're going to feel so much better when you finish. You just got to get past this 5 minutes of negativity or this 5 minutes of kind of mental blockage. And your day is going to be so much more productive. You're going to feel great when you leave. Just do it. Right. And so enough times of you training your brain to say that internally, the more you're going to create healthy habits. And so the internal self-talk is big, and you're on your way to really creating lifelong healthy habits if you can manage what's between your ears.
I love that you talk about train yourself to understand what's going to happen at the end. We don't do that enough, especially in our day and age where we are so quick to jump to whatever the next thing that's right in front of us is. I think that there was something that came out probably 3 or 4 years ago that said that the average human being, especially in Western society, our attention span has gone down to about 8 seconds, which matches up with the majority of what social media video clips is out there. So we're not thinking about the end result of whatever it is we're doing. We're not thinking that, hey, yes, I could go eat 2 or 3 donuts, but what's the end result of how am I going to feel? Yes, I could skip the workout, but how will I feel later? I had a conversation recently with a couple of people at work where one of the guys looks at me and he says, well, you eat well regularly. I said, yeah, I eat great food, but I also pay attention to how it makes me feel. And he says, well, how do you stay away from it? I can't remember what it was. And I said, I enjoy that food. Don't get me wrong, but I feel horrible after I eat it. And so I remember what it feels like. I sit in the garbage of that bloated feeling as soon as it's done. But I also sit in the positivity of what it feels like to eat the food that works for my body. So I'm with you 100% on train your brain to understand what it feels like when you finish. I mean, is there anything better in life than that feeling that you get at the end of a workout, the end of a training session, right?
Look, and that is the probably $1 billion opportunity in our industry is, can you package that feeling so that people can just know that you get through that workout, you get through 3, 5, 6 of them, and you see the benefits of how you feel. That's the value of our industry. That's the value of healthy living right there. You bottle up that mental feeling, reducing or the release of endorphins, and just feeling good, right? Feeling that sense of, wow, I sweat, I just feel healthy, I feel good. And I've tricked my brain to kind of talk me out of many mornings where I'm like, and I still do it. Everybody does. It's not where every single day I'm able to overcome that, right? And so I think people need to be aware that this is a journey. There's going to be wins, there's going to be challenges, but you're really in it for the long haul to be healthy, right? And it's the choices we make every single day of, I haven't talked a lot on the nutrition side, but what we put in our body, how we sleep, how we move, the stress, how you deal with stress. Everyone has stress. It's how you manage it that really is the key. And so there's a lot of components that probably a whole nother podcast of how to live healthy.
Yeah. But it's, I think that end result, right? It's how do you feel at the end of this? And the other thing I love when you talk about write it down, put it in your schedule. I'm a big fan of writing down how you feel on a day-to-day basis after you're finished, because like you said before, when it's visual, your body resonates with it more. Your mind will come back to that over and over again. I look back on some of my, writings and my journaling of like what was going on at certain points in my life and the times where I was not as consistent with my health and fitness. I wasn't exercising every single day. I can point back and say I wasn't a great father during those times. I was too reactive. I was too lazy. They would say, hey, Dad, can we go do this? And I'd find excuses to not do it. Or, my son or my daughter would do something and I would react very quickly in a negative way. I don't do that when I'm working out on a regular basis. It just completely changes things for me. And so I think it's important to realize for our listeners that when we're talking about how this affects you as a parent, it's not just this immediate impact that you get. post workout, but it's what does that then lead you to do and to be as a parent? All right, Jeff. So we've got.
I was going to say something real quick,
Yeah,
Steve, because this is another benefit of being in this space for so long is I've watched it evolve into what it is today, which is, more of the health benefits, right? Cardiovascular health and stress management and aging and living longer and all these things now where there is data and there is science backing to it. But look, I'll be honest, when I started, it was all about vanity. It was all about how you look, and you were in there to try to look your best, right? And maybe that's still the same when you're in your 20s, but as you go through different stages of life, that shifts, right? You still want to look good and feel good and self-confident, but it's really about the health benefits. It's really about me being able to go out and go for a bike ride with my son. It's last night, I helped coach a travel baseball team out here. I probably threw 150 pitches. That's and awesome. One of the coaches is 20 years my minor. And he's like, dude, how do you do that? And I'm like, well, it's part of what I want to do. I want to be in shape, in good enough shape so that I can be a good coach. To your point, right? It's things that help you be a better parent. But when I started, look, Bally's was all about vanity. And I've loved to see that it's more about the health benefits and that what this industry and what this healthy living space is about. And I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I'm a much better dad when I am when I'm on a regular routine.
Yeah, and you're not. I mean, we talk a lot in our society about how kids are getting raised by their phones or devices, right? So parents are not parenting, and I think part of that is because you have these parents out there that are not healthy, they're not active, and so if you can't go out and throw 150 pitches with your son, what are you doing? Well, you're either at home or you're sitting on the sidelines, or you got your head buried in your phone, and that's what the kids see. And so over time, they then follow with that same example. So, I mean, just there are numerous benefits that we could go on and on about with this ability to be, to understand that when you're training, how do you feel when you're finished? But then what does that look like down the road? All right, Jeff. So we've got the first one is create that habit to win the day. The second one is get moving in the morning. Write it down and schedule it. Make sure that you have it in your calendar. The fourth one is train your brain so that you understand how you feel when you finish. What's the fifth tip?
So the fifth, ironically, is going to be a great transition to what we just talked about, and make it a family event, right? I feel like this is so important, right? We're so busy. My wife works too. My wife is a school psychologist, and so she's got her career, and so we're always balancing activities and events and just busy, right? Which is a good thing.
Yep.
But we make an effort. It's in the calendar, right? It's written down. We might look at 2 months in advance of, maybe we're going to do a ski trip or we're going to go to the beach, but it's in our plan, and it's part of our core of our family. So hiking, biking, walking, like those three don't require money, yes, to get a bike, but a lot of it is just being outdoors. You live in beautiful Utah, right? I live in Southern California. So wherever you live, right, there's just the opportunity to get outside and spend time with your kids. Because as a parent today, and I had this conversation with my dad, like, he just doesn't understand. We are at battle with technology every day as a parent. To get our kids off of video games or off of their phone or off social media is such a struggle. And we see how it impacts their brains. I know if somehow my son sneaks on his phone in the morning before school, he's in a different mood, right? There might be something that just gets him the wrong way on social media. Maybe it's something that a friend said, right? There's just social bullying is a real thing. And so it's incredibly challenging as a parent this day and age to battle against that, right? It's easier said than done to just take the phone away. Look, I've seen meltdowns when I do that. And so we just balance it in, and we explain how important it is outside of their sports and their team activities. My daughter does classical ballet, and my son plays baseball and some other sports. And so we keep them active there. But lifetime sports, right? I go back to the skiing and the anything, horseback riding, or just things that they can do as they become adults, because eventually team sports are going to go away. You can still do it as an adult, and hopefully they will, but the opportunities are less. And so you want to kind of weave in a lot of different things. Like I invested in a ping pong table for our garage because
Nice.
it's competitive, it's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
I see the other kids that come over and they want to challenge me. And so we have ping pong tournaments in our garage. And so there's just ways to weave, you know, this healthy living mindset into your day-to-day life as a parent and make it a family event. Like just really get your kids excited about it. It's something my wife and I talk about all the time. Now it's tough to get my oldest, because of his current career as an actor, to travel with us and do vacations, but he did
Sure.
all
Sure.
the way through his early 20s, right? He wanted to be partake because they would be fun vacations. We did surfing trips and skiing trips. But my wife and I talk about how can we keep our kids wanting to do things with us as they get older. And that's something you and I talked about, Steve, off the podcast. And it's really fun activities, right? If they're going to go on vacation with us, it's probably going to have to be a fun ski trip, or it's going to have to be maybe a beach trip where they can, we can go do some fun stuff. But it's all going to be around activity.
Yeah.
Right? I think at
Yeah.
the end of this number 5 for me, it's always going to be around some type of activity that's part of that vacation. And even if it's day-to-day life, it's going to be weaved into their brain, whether they know it or not. It's subconsciously kind of being embedded into their brains early in life.
Well, so if you're a parent, if you're a father or a mother, this is the other part of you that you have to work in, right? If you're a person that just says, I go to the gym, I work out, I go for long runs. I mean, I know a lot of people that they get involved in marathon running or triathlons, and those are very solo sports. And not that there's anything wrong with that. But if there's not this other aspect to you where your tribe, the group of people that you are closest with, your family, if they're not involved in what you're doing, it makes that healthy living so much more difficult. Like you, our activities that we do as a family revolve primarily around getting out and doing things together, whether we're skiing, or wakeboarding, we're going paddleboarding in the summertime. I mean, we'll try anything, right? I mean, we've got a ping pong table down in the basement, so I can resonate with that as I hear my kids down there yelling and screaming at each other and their friends. We're the place to compete. I had a really cool experience recently where my sister-in-law, she said to me, "Hey, my daughter was saying," this is my niece, said to me, I yelled at her because she punched her brother, who's older than her, right? So she said she punched her brother, and her brother's like, ow, that hurt. And I had to look at her and I said, Esther, you don't know how hard you hit, and you got to stop hitting your brother and stop hitting people so hard. And she looked at her mom and said, but Mom, I've been training my whole life for this. Uncle Steve makes me do push-ups, and he teaches me how to punch because he says I got to be ready for this stuff in life. And so, and so here's a niece that when we go on a hike as a family, and I'll say, hey, who wants to come? She's the first one there. When I say, hey, you want to drop down and do a push-up challenge? She's the first one to jump in. But this becomes part of the identity, right? This becomes part of the culture of who you are. And I think, Jeff, when you talked about, number 3, that you've got to write it down and you've got to schedule it, you don't have people arguing with you about that. If it's in your calendar, it's just part of who you are. If this is part of what your family does, this is part of who you are. Nobody questions that, right? If who you are is this person that does health and fitness, it's like, yeah, we accept that, right? So you run into less of those. Like you said, I'm like you. There are days where I think to myself, I don't want to go to the gym. I'm tired. I don't want to eat this food. The donut sounds better. But it's a lot easier to do when our identity and our tribe and the things we do on a day-to-day basis are wrapped into this.
Yeah, I can't recall what book it was that I read early in my career, but it was about the days that you go out on a run and it's raining are the days that help you create the habit. The sunny days and the beautiful weather,
easy days.
the brain's saying, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
but it's when you overcome obstacles and those challenges in your journey. And you're always going to have those obstacles. You're always going to have that negativity, those thoughts internally. It's overcoming more than less, right? And so that always stuck with me, because we all know, like, if especially if you grow up in Utah, I grew up in Maryland, it's cold. Like, we have winters,
Yeah.
not as difficult out here in Southern California, I won't lie, but
Yeah.
it's
Right.
still, the brain will play tricks on you. It'll say,
Yep.
oh, it's a little chilly today, or it's windy today, or oh my God, it's raining. Right? Get your butt out of bed, go do something active, win the day, start off with positivity and movement, and you're going to be a lot more successful with checking off a lot more boxes in your career.
Yeah, I love this, and this is core to your overall leadership belief. This is you as a leader, as a father, but this is you as a leader in businesses, and this is something that you've had for a long time. It's these foundational principles. There's nothing new here that, as far as I'm concerned, that you taught me, way back when. This is how you've lived your life, and so I think there's a lot of authenticity to it, but there's a lot of simplicity that makes your leadership easy to follow. That was one of the things I learned early on from you was, if you're going to be a great leader, you've got to be easy to follow. People have to see what you're doing, and they have to say, oh, that's exactly what I need to do. Right. And so this, as you're speaking to groups, as you're consulting, or you're working with your team in your company, these are all foundational principles that you live and teach in the business, right?
Yeah, look, I'm still a strong believer of keeping it simple. This day and age, there's just so much white noise. I mean, our brains are so distorted with so many messages, and so many different type of leadership books. And again, you got to keep adding to your knowledge base. But I like to keep it simple. I like to hire folks that are very driven and passionate about the space. So I know that on a tough day, they still feel good about the brand or the product or the company that they're working for. And Steve, I'm a true believer in hiring somebody that's intelligent and smart, and don't be the type of leader that is lets ego get in the way. I want
Yep.
those people to run. Like, I want them to do their thing, feel strong, focus on their strengths, and really just grow as a person. Like, that's another thing too, is really managing a person, not a process, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
we're all
Yep.
have different, things that motivate us, and to me, it's building relationships and bringing value, right? Just bringing to value. And one of my other ones, you'll probably laugh at this, and this is probably a Mike Brown. I took this one from Mike Brown, one of
Yeah.
our mentors back in the day, and
Old
that is,
school lifetime
yeah,
reference.
you got
Yep.
to make a lot more deposits before you can take out those withdrawals, right? You got
Yeah.
to have money in the
Yep.
bank before you can take those withdrawals. And so I tell my team all the time, especially in franchising, we have to make deposits to our franchisees, support them, train them, train them over and over, because there's going to be times we're going to ask for those withdrawals for them to make a change, or to follow a system that might be a little bit new to them. And whether it's in relationships, or whether it's in business, or even as a parent, right? We've got to make those deposits. For my 12-year-old to want to go out and go on a bike ride with me, I have to make those deposits for him to feel good about that.
Yeah.
And so pretty common themes in life that still work for me over these years is keep it simple, and make plenty of deposits. So when you have to make those withdrawals, there's no resistance.
Why do you think people overcomplicate? And I don't disagree that reading books is probably an important thing. I think I've become less passionate about that over the years, because I find that experience teaches me more than any book could. But why do you think people make it more complicated when they get into a leadership position?
Maybe it's just the lack of experience, right? I think the more that you experience challenges and you overcome them, you become much more confident, right? And so I've also been one, and this is probably just part of my DNA. It's either a good thing or a bad thing, but I don't really show a lot of emotion. I don't get too high with the highs, too low
Yeah.
with the lows. And so I know my team knows that they're going to get pretty even keel, Jeff, day in, day out, and we might be crushing it, and I'm going to be complementary, and we might be struggling, and I'm going to be like, all right, we just got to get better than yesterday, right? And so I think it's how you approach things, and not get too high with the highs, too low with the lows. And then our kids see that as well,
Yeah.
right? And so as our kids start overcoming adversity and start, failing and having to overcome that, that is going to build their DNA as well, and kind of circle right back. That's why I feel like the core healthy living foundation helps them understand that. They're
Yeah.
going to have, some days where they're just not feeling it, but they can go back to the gym or go out for a walk and feel better the next day.
There's something to be said about this 5-step or these 5 keys that just create consistency. And I think back to, your leadership, and you're right. I didn't experience anything where it was a high or a low with you. And I remember, tough situations that we were having to deal with. And I remember, the fun times, the winning times, but it was pretty much the same person that showed up every single day. I want to go to the time piece, Jeff. You mentioned before, this idea of time, and people oftentimes will say they don't have the time to exercise, or oh, I don't have the time to do these 5 things that you're talking about. Why do you think that's such a common excuse?
Because they probably haven't achieved that. They haven't been able to really manage their time, or time management hasn't been a strong set. And so I knew for me that I needed to just write things down and be organized. My brain needs to work that way. I'm a little off if I don't start the day with a plan. And
Yeah.
yes, every day, even the weekends, my wife, if she was on this call, I drive her nuts. I have my schedule for Saturdays and Sundays. It's not like just because it's the weekend, it's free time. I want to maximize my weekends with my kids, with my wife, with individual stuff, right? And so I've got it mapped out when the time I wake up to the time I go to bed on the weekends. And so maybe a little over the top. Not everybody has to be that crazy about, their time management, but it helps me, right? It really helps me manage my brain and manage my schedule. And I always thought of this. You look at Braun back in the day, even now, like running a multi-billion-dollar valuation company, and he still teaches a cycle class. He'll
Yeah.
still go in
Yeah.
and play tennis, or now his favorite
He's doing pickleball, isn't he?
Pickleball.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I'll be honest, like he really is another great example, a mentor that we both worked with that walks the walk. And there's some executives in this industry that don't see that need of being able to see your product from the consumer point of view.
Yeah.
But I talk about this, Steve, all the time to my franchisees. You've got to see your business from the MPV, members' point of view. And how do you do that? You get on the treadmill right next to them and you sweat your butt off just like them. Like, you need to be vulnerable. You need to put the ego out the window. You don't need to be the fittest person because you're the president of the brand, but you should at least show that you believe in it. And so, it's part of the business of seeing it from the member's point of view, and just living it, eating it, and breathing it.
I think the time management piece it is really important. I agree with you, and I also think that there is that vulnerability piece, because if somebody has not been consistent with these tips on a regular basis, and health and fitness has not been a cornerstone of their life, it's easier to just say I don't have the time than it is to actually dig in and say, no, I do have 20 minutes, I do have 30 minutes, I could commit to this. Because it's uncomfortable when you get started. Let's face it, you're sweating, you're breathing hard, you're sore the next day if you haven't been doing it for a while. There's a vulnerability that comes with that, where people have to push through those uncomfortable times. I want to come back to this, the idea that we still, and you mentioned before, you've been in the business about 30 years, right? I think I'm coming up on about 25 years, and there are days where there are things that are challenging. So on the days where it's challenging to get yourself to move, it's challenging to get yourself to live these 5 key tips or principles. What do you do to overcome that? What's your process look like?
Yeah, I think one is be kind to yourself, right? You have that internal talk, and know that, listen to your body. Like, there are times your body is telling you might be too sore, right?
Yeah.
Or you may have injured something, And that's a big piece, right? You need to listen to your body. You know, not everybody can be a David Goggins. I don't know if you know who that
Yeah.
is,
Oh yeah.
the fittest guy on the planet,
Yeah.
runs, you know, crazy. I met him in person. He's a different cat, and he's an ex-Navy SEAL, right? So I think they think a little bit differently about life.
Tapes up his
But
feet even though
he
they're broken, right? I mean, he'll still run
oh
on
my
broken
God, some of
feet,
the
and
stories
oh,
for
it's
that
crazy.
guy. Yeah, the book's incredible, the podcast. But my point is he's overcome, like, you don't need to do that, right? You
Right.
don't need to hurt your body. You don't need to, uh, you know, uh, just listen to your body and be kind to yourself. So it is a day that you take off. Maybe you do something else. And I've talked a lot about walking because I've learned that the walking can be therapeutic for me now.
Yeah.
Like I used to
Same.
be like, God, if I'm walking, I'm not getting any benefits here. I need to be running. Why am I walking? But
Yep.
my brain has allowed me to realize there's tremendous benefits to just a great walk, right? And so just be kind to yourself, understand that it's a journey. You know, it's a marathon versus a sprint. You want to stay healthy longer. It's not about being the fittest, you know, and maybe some people that motivates some people. It doesn't for me anymore. It's really about just the longevity of being healthy, and being able to age gracefully over time. But be kind to yourself. I think that's
Yeah.
a big one. Learn how to, you know, accept that that day is just not going to be uh, the day you're going to get to the gym. But just make that the minority. Like with that, I will say, if I start getting 2 or 3 or 4 of those days, I know, this is going to become a habit, right?
Yeah.
Not going
Yeah.
is going to be easier than going. And so I break that habit. I break that streak so that then I can get back on another good streak. So I think a lot of it, Steve, is just moderation, be kind to yourself, and keep working on the internal, you know, self-talk.
Yeah. I love that. Jeff, what's something in the last 3 years that you've learned that excites you the most?
Something that I've learned in the last 3 years, patience continues to be a virtue, right? And
Mm.
so I've got a 12-year-old that I think is going to either age me quickly or the vice versa, because
There you go.
he's quite the challenge, right? And so
Nice.
I like to say my oldest, pretty laid back, old soul, very driven. Obviously, has had great success in a very tough industry as an actor. And we'll still say that, look, he has to, you know, find balance, and the exercise component is critical for him. I've got my middle, my daughter, again, probably my personality, very chill, laid back, goes with the flow. You know, just not difficult, although she's a 15-year-old girl, so I'm dealing with that and
Yeah.
social media.
Yeah.
My little guy, I'm getting my money's worth, right? So
Nice.
he is just always something new. He challenges me. Right now it's mountain biking, which I'm great that it's something that's healthy, right? He will get pulled into, you know, video games and his phone, and it's a struggle to get him off, and it's an all-out brawl at 12. So I'm like, geez, hope he doesn't get bigger and stronger and starts taking dad down when he's 16, 18. But
Yeah. Right.
just a fun kid. He actually turns 12 today. It's his birthday. Got to give him a shout out.
Awesome.
But he is intrigued. Like he'll go from skateboarding to mountain biking. He loves baseball. That's his mainstay. And then he'll be like, you know, Dad, I want to do what's another one that recently just blew me away. He got into ping pong, so that's been great. He's interested, right, and by a lot of different things, and he's very strong-willed, and I'm getting my money's worth. So it's learn to be patient. Like I can't get him to change his mind. He's very stubborn, so I have to be patient with my approach, and that's challenged me, Steve. So I don't know if that was the answer you were looking
No,
for, but
that's
that one's
great.
definitely challenged me. And I'll share a funny story because we were just talking about this. When he was really into skateboarding, you know, as a dad, you're like, you know, I got some tricks. I used to skateboard back in the day. Well,
Oh
I
yeah.
should
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
have gotten on a skateboard at this stage of my career, but I did. And I
Yeah.
pressed him for about 10 minutes. And then I did a split like no 50-plus-year-old guy should have done.
Yeah.
And I really tore my hamstring really bad. I mean, it was black and purple. And to this day, it's kind of an inside joke that Dad was out there trying to, show off some skateboard tricks and basically broke his leg. And that's the other thing. Know your limitations.
Yeah, right,
Right.
right.
So as I've gotten to
And they
this
do change as
stage,
you get older.
they do change. I
Yeah,
might not be
yeah,
doing double black diamonds when I go skiing this year, but I'll still be out there and I'll be moving, burning calories and being active
nice.
and being a role model for my kid. It's just in moderation. So it's okay.
I love that. Yeah, my son, when he picked up skateboarding, he says, "Dad, can you teach me a few tricks?" I'm like, "Probably not. I can like show you the concept of it, but I don't think I could do anything that I did." And within like 3 months, that kid was better than what I ever was as a kid. So, yeah, I feel you on the patience piece, though. That takes that's an ongoing virtue that I think we have to lean into. Um, Jeff, I mean, you're busy. You're running a company. You're speaking. You're doing a lot of different things. You're staying fit. But who's inspiring you right now?
I will say my parents still inspire me. As we watch our parents age, we are still learning from them, right? They are
Yeah,
still, it's
yeah,
different stages in life. And so, my dad still is outdoors. He's an outdoorsman, loves to hunt and fish. And so what I've learned is it's very therapeutic, right? Being outdoors in the wilderness and even self time for him. So whether he knows it or not, he's still a role model. He still motivates me, and I really watch them go for walks and just being active. Right, they understand the benefits. Again, it's a different generation. It was never about going to the gym. Like part of my DNA is 3, 4, 5 days a week. I'm at some type of gym or studio, and I do outdoor stuff as well, but it's a different way that they've kind of approached healthy living over the years. And so they are absolutely role models, and I admire. And I'm also going to say, my oldest son, uh, going into an industry where I was just, yeah, let's try it. You don't really have a lot of experience. He really wasn't that theater, did plays. He just really fell into it, and has been persistent to make something happen. And just very proud of how he's handled, the first 3 years where he really wasn't getting any jobs and still
yeah.
kept at it and had that persistence and tenacity. And then now the last 3 years where he has actually landed some great gigs and he's kind of in a different place, and how he's handling that, how he's managing that. And so, love to give him a shout out as well, because he's handled this extremely well, and we're very proud.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a difficult thing. And I know you and I talked before about what a challenge that would be, because getting in that's a really tough business, right? Hollywood is not an easy business to be in. And I think that, you hear about people say, well, it was hard to get this role or it's hard to get that role. And the whole starving actor, starving actress concept, I would almost venture that, getting to a level of success that he's been able to get to has got to be even more difficult, because now you're dealing with literally millions of people know who you are, and millions of people are looking to you for, inspiration, for fandom, whatever. That's got to be a tough thing. Talk a little bit about how you have kind of helped him to navigate that as a father. I think that would be an interesting thing to hear. Of how
Yeah.
do you have you helped him keep his feet on the ground?
Well, I think it starts initially with his decision to pursue this. And so as a parent, you want your kids to follow their passion, follow
Yeah.
their heart. And so he had just a little bit of success in some modeling and doing commercials in his teens, but never again was pursuing acting. And
Mhm.
so after he graduated, that was a big thing. I wanted him to finish college. There was those periods during his 20s where he was starting to come out to LA and audition. And I look back, and the blessing in disguise is he heard a lot of no's during those years. And so that forced him to go back to Florida and finish his degree. And then once he graduated, both his mom and I were like, yeah, why not? No kids, no mortgage, no, why not? But here's the deal. you're on your own. We're not going to supplement you to live in LA
Yeah.
if you are not out there to pursue acting. And so there were some tough times there, Steve, to be honest, where, when you cut a kid off from, that maybe college life, or just not having the means to pay for things, I wanted that burning desire for him to pursue acting, right? I didn't want him out there just living kind of the California life. And so he did all the jobs you hear of people struggling in Hollywood. He was a bartender. He was he worked valet parking. He did banquets for Hollywood folks, right? And did all those kind of funky jobs to go on auditions, and was getting parts, but just nothing that really was paying the bills.
Yeah.
And, there was many times we had conversations where I think I'm going to move back to Florida, or I think this is just not my deal. But he still, kept at it, and he was persistent, and he was making good impressions. And I said, every time you meet someone, just make sure they leave that conversation or that audition saying, hey, he's a good kid, right? He deserves an opportunity. And if you make enough of those good deposits, you may be able to get a withdrawal down the road. And as the story goes, pre-COVID, he landed a lead role on one of Netflix really low budget shows at that time. There was no thought that this was going to be, the huge success it is. And then, of course, it aired in April of 2020, when every teenager was home, quarantined and miserable, right? And so the viewership was incredible. And Outer Banks and John B. and the whole Outer Banks cast became overnight heroes to teens across the world. And it's been a crazy ride ever since, with some up and downs, with, obviously the opportunity to be on a successful show like that, but with all the other sides of it. To your point, he lost his ability to have privacy.
Sure.
He's lost his ability, to go out to dinner without having, some type of interaction. But that all comes with the territory, as they say.
Yeah.
And all we've done is tried to surround him with just family and support and love to get him through that. But like he's living the dream.
Well, and I think when you and I talked earlier, and I love how you just said that, make sure that they know that you're a good kid, right? And he had tried out for a part that he didn't get, but then that led to this opportunity down the road for him to be in Outer Banks and become, what he's doing right now, which I think that's such a valuable thing. And that's not to put an idea in someone's head that, hey, if you're a good kid, you're going to become super famous, but that still is the most important thing, right? That regardless of fame or fortune or anything else that you have, making sure that you leave people well, I think is critical. Well, Jeff, we are coming up on our time, but I want to ask you one last question. So when you think about personal growth and evolution, one of the things that we talk about a lot on the podcast is that you have to disrupt something in order for you to continue to grow and evolve. That could be one simple tip. It could be, a continual disruption that you have to make. If you were to give our listeners one thing that you would want them to disrupt in order to spark some evolution in their life, what would it be?
I think being a creature of habit. We've talked about being a creature of habit for the good side of things, but I think the number one thing to disrupt is disrupt your own routine, right? Try different things. It's very easy for me to get up and go to the gym and do the same thing over and over again, because that's been ingrained in my brain. And I still struggle with this, Steve, is where I need to do different things and try different classes and do different activities. And I don't think you ever stop, whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, 60s, 70s, and on, as Don Waldman is a great example of that. You can do an Ironman in your 70s, right? So don't let your brain get in the way of what you can accomplish, and disrupt your brain by doing different things, right? Don't be a creature of habit. So if you've created the good habits of healthy living, right, that's a huge accomplishment. But then you're in that category. don't be a creature of habit and do the same thing over and over again. And so I think that's where I'm at in my journey is, all right, I got to keep trying different things, and I need to do different workouts so that I'm not the creature of habit that I've created over the last, 50 years of my life.
Yeah, I love that. Disrupted. It's great to have those habits. It's great to have the routines, but at the same time, if the habit then becomes a crutch, you got to create a disruption in order to do something new, spark that evolution. Well, Jeff Stokes, what a great conversation. And on that note, folks, it is time for us to wrap up another episode of the Evolve podcast. I want to thank Jeff for coming on today as a guest. Jeff, where's the best place for people to continue to learn more about what you do, follow you, and keep up to date with you?
Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, thanks, Steve, I'm the president of Stride Fitness, one of the 10 boutique fitness franchise brands, part of Expo. And so we're a fast-growing brand popping up all around the country. And you can reach me at Jeff@RunWithStride, or go to stridefitness.com to learn more about Stride Fitness. But just a dynamic workout. It's a treadmill-based interval training concept that also involves cardiovascular and strength training. It's not about running. We have a lot of folks that come in just to get a great workout. And we then have a lot of folks that graduate into our running programs. They might want to try their first 5K, their first 10K, maybe a marathon. So whatever your bucket list is, Stride Fitness is a good entry point for folks that just want to run, walk, interval training, do some strength training to get in better shape. And so that's where you can find me. As always, I do leadership training and some speaking gigs and podcasts, which I love. Steve, this has been awesome. I think it's just so natural for you and I to connect. And we've got so many connections from the past and great memories. So I'm super glad that things are going well with you. This podcast is awesome. And yeah, I'm still doing the same thing, right? I'm in the fitness space. I'm leading a brand, and really, really passionate about this specific product because I personally do it 3-4 times a week. And I do know that whether you're walking or running outdoors, it's so therapeutic. And that's really what Stride Fitness represents. So again, I'm fully aligned. My personal, my professional, and even my individual, focus all kind of revolves around this healthy living core.
Awesome. Well, and I think one of the great things for our listeners is that in today's day and age, you can come up with excuses not to work out. You can come up with excuses not to be fit, but it's not like you don't have a choice. I mean, there are so many options, and these boutiques like Stride are just phenomenal to find your niche, to get started. And like you talked about you may not want to start out and say, hey, I'm going to run a marathon, but you could start out and get fit by doing some of those workouts. And then who knows what that evolves into. Well, again, Jeff Stokes, thanks for joining us today. And hey, folks, remember that it does take time and consistency to evolve, but first you have to disrupt. And now it's time for you to get out there and evolve.